I would like to bring up the founder and former executive director of New Ground, the one and only Sister Mairead Barrett. Mairead had the vision to make New Ground happen over 20 years ago, and we're all here tonight thanks to her.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to introduce the award for Mr. Christopher Waldorf posthumously. And in 1991, on January 15th, when I opened the one door to New Ground, which was a classroom in Christ's First Presbyterian Church at 54 Washington Street in Hempstead, there was a desk for a part-time social worker and a desk for me, and a phone line, and one of the really old-fashioned phones. So I thought, okay, this is what we do now. I was there alone because it's a federal holiday, but I wanted the beginning to be Martin Luther King's Day. So 2 or 3 months went on, and we were beginning to work with the families. And I had gone to Stony Brook Small Business Institute to find out how you set up a business. And they said you get a board of directors, you register with the state with your name, you get a good accountant, and you make sure that you do everything right because you have to be covered. And you get insurance. I said, insurance? I know people that do insurance. I'm an Ursuline, and we have insurance. So I called the Queen's office, and they give us Mr. Waldorf's number. So I called the Waldorf office, and Mr. Christopher Waldorf is put on the phone. Now, I don't know him from any other person out at the Waldorfs. I don't know that he's important, or he's the next person on the line who's taking the next phone call that comes in. So he says, "Oh, sister," he says, "now what are you doing in Hempstead?" So I fumbled through and I tried to explain the mission, and I said, "Look, I'm just here about 2 weeks, but I understand I need coverage." And he's like, "For what?" I said, "I have no idea." He said, "Well, why don't I send my sons out to see you?" So I think Bill and Steve came out and they explained insurance. I probably still don't know today what it all means. But what I do know is that every social worker, every educator, every volunteer, and every board member, and anybody who walked near us was covered by insurance. Then a beautiful thing happened. So that was January. By February, we were all insured. A beautiful thing happened in June of that year. Mr. Waldorf called, and he said that he also had his wife Helen beside him. And he said, "You know, sister, we were thinking about the kinds of things that you said you're going to do with the families. And we have a camp out here in Northport called Camp Alvernia. And we'd like to send all of the children to camp." I was like, "All of them? Hempstead, Roosevelt, Uniondale, Long Beach, Freeport, Bayshore?" He said, "All of them. What's the problem?" I said, "Nothing, Mr. Waldorf, nothing." So I talked to the parents, and they were like, "Where's Northport?" So I had to get the map and show them where Northport was. And Mr. and Mrs. Waldorf helped us put the busing in place, get the children ready with monies for clothes for camp, for hiking, boating, biking, swimming. And then Mrs. Helen Waldorf said, as she always did, "And what about the children for going back to school? Won't they need some clothes at the end of the summer for going back to school?" I said, "Oh yes, they will need that too." You see, I was just learning New Ground. I was just creating it as we were going. So the first school year was very important to know what would everybody need. But Mr. and Mrs. Waldorf really helped us create the special memories that happen for every young person that gets to go to a camp that's not in their own backyard, if you know what I mean. And they really helped us begin to have children have choices over what would you like to do this summer, and these are some options. And every summer, they initiated that phone call of how much money do you need and how many children do you have. And nobody was more excited than they were when the numbers grew. Now, in the meantime, Bill and Stephen still came in and explained insurance and what the policy was and the difference between regular board insurance and all the other kinds of executives and officers insurance and social workers and educators insurance, and if you trip or if you fall. So I had notebooks full of notes, and they kept saying, you don't have to write anything down. We'll have it all ready for you. I was like, okay. It took me 5 years before I let the notebooks go and trusted the policies and that everything was in place. But this legacy that the Waldorf family has given to us is no small measure. Because right up to the present day, the children get to go to summer camp. And right up to the present day, parents are engaged with their children and their summer plans through the social workers. And that empowerment and that ability to live like every other child on Long Island who has an opportunity maybe to have a sleepaway experience, or to do a special activity, or to have a special time learning something new, even if it's for 1 or 2 weeks. Our children are exposed in that way thanks to the Waldorfs, and it is a tremendous gift that they have given to us. Now, being from Tipperary, I really didn't know a lot about business over here, but in the very first phone call with Mr. Waldorf, he said, sister, he says, did you ever go to knock? Now, I don't know if you all know what knock is, but it's really not just knocking on the window here like this. Knock is a site of pilgrimage. And thanks be to God I'd been there a load of times, because so had Mr. and Mrs. Waldorf. And I'm not sure we would have gotten the money if I didn't go to knock and say all those prayers on my knees, get the holy water, because they loved knock. And every time I went there, then in the years ongoing, I would send them a card from knock. So Mr. and Mrs. Waldorf had a deep faith and a rich tradition like that. And as you can see tonight from the number of men and women in religious life who are their guests, they definitely had an inkling about giving support to religious communities that chose to work with economically poor people. That was a deliberate act on their part to empower us. And for that, we are deeply grateful. There was a sister of the Congregación de Notre Dame working out in Pine Ridge Reservation, and the trailers went on fire one day. And Mr. Waldorf called me to see had I seen the news and did I hear about this. I said, I'm sorry, no, I didn't hear anything. And he said, well, I'm sending you a check too. I said, okay, I'm in Hempstead. He's saving the nuns out in Pine Ridge in Dakota, and he thought of us in Hempstead. That's the kind of man he was, that if they were doing good work over there and they needed help, well, surely I need help, even though we didn't request the money at that time. So it has been a privilege to speak about Helen and Mr. Waldorf, and Helen, his wife, joined him every step of the way in the generosity. When Carmela was involved in the camp stuff in the beginning, we used to have to make out the budget for Mrs. Waldorf with Mrs. Waldorf, and she'd tell us if we forgot things, like sneakers or bathing suits or whatever it was. She'd say, now sister, you didn't write this down, or you didn't do that. I always blamed Carmela for those mistakes, because, you know, I wasn't going to tell him what I didn't know. But Helen was a partner with her husband in this tremendous legacy that they have left for us. And for that, we are very, very grateful. So it is my honor to invite Stephen and Bill to come forward to receive the Groundbreaker Award.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, New Ground, my co-honorees, board of directors, everyone here tonight, wait staff, everyone who's made this evening quite enjoyable. Thank you again. A number of years ago, probably about 7 or so, someone asked me once, I was traveling and was taken back to the airport. And he was a movie director, writer. And he asked me a question. He said, "What do you want your legacy to be?" And at the time he asked me, I kind of gave him a snap answer and went on and dropped him off. But later on that week, that month, I started to reflect on the significance and the weight of that type of a question. And it started to make me think about what exactly do I want my legacy to be? See, because I'm the kind of guy that I look at everything that happens in life. Every situation, every circumstance, people who come in and out of your life. And it has significance, it has purpose, there's meaning behind it. And you don't necessarily recognize it at that moment. Maybe later on you do, but it's almost an opportunity. And it's an opportunity for greatness, because I think we're all called to a level of greatness. We have a huge potential in the things that we do, the choices that we make, and how we live our lives. And my father is someone who I don't think had a goal in mind, who knew exactly what his legacy would be when he was living his life. But he was consistently presented with choices and opportunities and chances, and the choices that he made defined his legacy. And it was a legacy of giving, of something that he didn't necessarily want everyone to know. Since he passed over a year ago, this past August, I've been going through their house and coming up with letters and plaques and different correspondences to various charities and people that he supported that none of us at the time knew anything about. From a church or a school in India where we replaced the roof to, as Sister Mary and Shannon pointed out, sending children away to schools, to supporting prison ministries to make sure that they had certain prayer books and rosaries for the ministries that they were conducting in prisons. And he never told anybody about it, because it wasn't about that. There was, and I promise I won't take too much of your time on this, but Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One aspect of his habits was a sphere of influence and a sphere of concern. The sphere of influence is something that we're concerned about on a very global basis. And I'm sure everyone here in this room is aware of what just took place over in the Philippines. And the devastation, the fact that they're now counting over 4,600 people who have now clearly passed away from that major storm. That's a sphere of concern. But what I do on a daily basis doesn't necessarily impact that. But what I can do every day is by coming here, and as you are very much so supporting New Ground and their ventures and their ministries, is impacting not only individuals, but their families and everyone around them. It's a sphere of influence, and that sphere of influence is dramatically impacted by how we address the choices and challenges, opportunities that we're presented with every day to climb to a level of greatness. I wonder, what my legacy will be. But I know that I've been blessed with the opportunity of working with my father for over 23 years and seeing and now knowing better what his legacy was. And honestly, it makes it a little bit more challenging when I face those opportunities, if you will. I'm going to continue to live my life thinking about that. And if there's anything I can pass along to you, is maybe you could think about what your legacy will be when it comes to opportunities like New Ground, like the opportunities of helping anybody who presents themselves in a unique way, however it may be. On behalf of my father, on behalf of my mother, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, my family, and everyone else in between, I respectfully accept this award on behalf of my father. Thank you very much. Thank you, New Ground. Thank you, everyone.